Yay, here they come. It's awesome. I love it. Hello, everybody. Welcome. So excited to be here with just two of my favorite people. That's what I like to bring into my corner each week, are people that I just love and respect. And these are definitely two of those people. They've done such an insane amount for our industry that I'm going to have to read from some notes I made. So just you wait. Here we go. So Tim and Pamela Kashani are the creators of Apples and Oranges Studios, which is an incredible company that's combining technology and the arts in exciting ways to produce cutting edge theater. On Broadway, they have produced a few shows, all of which won a Tony Award. We have The Revival of Hair, Memphis, and An American in Paris. On film, they did Emma the Musical, No One Called Ahead, and they've also launched Theater Accelerator, which I'm obsessed with the way they write it because it looks like the theater Accelerator. It's amazing. Which is an immersive musical theater development intensive for promising storytellers. And then in 2019, they launched a partnership with the Schubert organization called Broadway Tech Accelerator, an environment for entrepreneurs and technology to accelerate early stage startups in the live entertainment sector. From candle footlights to holograms, Broadway is embracing new technology and they are helping pave the way. There's so much to talk about. And then for those who may not realize it, as you know, of course, her married name is Pamela. Her maiden name, Winslow, and is just, I was obsessed with her, as many of my fellow musical theater lovers have been, as the original Rapunzel in Into the Woods, and just gave like an iconic and epic performance, starring, of course, opposite the incredible Bernadette Peters, with just one of the most iconic casts in musical theater history, luckily documented for all of us to see whenever we want. And then, of course, for our fellow Trekkie fans, created the role of Ensign McKnight on Star Trek The Next Generation, has done many a Broadway show herself. Please welcome to TJ's Corner, the incredible Tim Kashani and Pamela Winslow Kashani. Woo!
Hello, TJ. We are sending love right back to you. We adore you and love what you're doing for theater, especially in our neck of the woods in Orange County, where we all are right now. And just so happy to be sitting here with you today.
Yay. Well, I'm thrilled. Yeah, you guys are amazing. I cannot wait to talk about your story, which of course I know a lot. I got the privilege of getting to do one of the shows that was going through the Accelerator program with y'all, and got to do a staged reading where I got to play many a fabulous character.
Yes, you did.
And got to play with Pamela, and it was just such a thrill, so much fun. So I know I got to spend a good amount of time with you guys, and I know a bit about this, but to kind of clue everyone else in, so I want to start at the beginning. You guys met, you fell in love, you're both performers, and then you woke up and said, let's produce a Broadway show. So let's talk about, how did that come about? How did you decide that was something you wanted to do? Is it always something you wanted to do? Because I know, you know, you both are actors, and you know, is that, it's not always a transition from going from one side of the stage to the other. And I know, Pamela, you're still active on both sides, but how did that come about, and how did hair specifically come about? What an incredible thing that the world needed at the time, you know, and still needs now. So tell me about that.
Absolutely. I guess I'll dive in.
Sure.
And start off by saying it was a surprising journey. It wasn't the journey we were expecting to take at all. And we did meet at the stage door of the Palace Theater. I was performing as Babette in Beauty and the Beast on Broadway. And Tim was also performing, but at the same time, because he can't sit still, was running his IT company and had a big contract with Morgan Stanley, which was 2 blocks away in New York City. We met on a blind date and fell madly in love. And that was it. From that date, December 19th, 1996, we have been together ever since that time.
Oh.
And we've fell in love, as I said, and then we ended up moving to California after 9/11, around 2002, we moved here, but kept a place in the city. And we're kind of doing the bi-coastal thing. All the time we were doing this and going through all of these transitions. And then at that time I was pregnant with our first child and only child, Timothy. We were reevaluating how we were creative. And when I had Timothy, I thought, hey, this is going to be great. I will have my beautiful baby and I'll take a 6-month leave. And then I'll go back to my gypsy actor life, the way that I had been doing for 20 years and made my living at it. And that was the way I knew how to live.
Yeah.
And I took a look at this baby and I thought, and I looked at this man and I said, no, that's not my happiness. So my happiness had to shift, but my creative soul still needed to be fed. And I still needed to feel like I was fulfilled in that creative way. And so Tim at the same time was going back to film school to get a second master's degree in film production. Do you want to talk about Chapman?
Sure. Well, leading up to that,
I see people like doing this right now. Like,
okay. Before meeting Pamela, lived this dual life. I went to UC Irvine and got my computer science degree and my MBA while I was doing musicals. And in my early 20s, while performing in Orange County at the Usual Suspects at the time, this was before 3D, I had done a few productions of West Side Story as Bernardo and his action, and didn't like any of them. That I didn't feel like they were done in the way that I would do it. So Yorba Linda Civic Light Opera was announced it. They asked me to be in it, and I said I'd rather direct it. And I made a deal, which is if I directed it, I would also help produce it and we would make money. And that's how the producing and directing started. And as time went on, continued to do more of that. But as Pamela mentioned, the technology company just kept growing. And we were building systems for Microsoft and Morgan Stanley and PaineWebber and UBS and going all over the world doing this fun business. And financially, it allowed me to put money back into the arts. But then during 9/11, had that moment of, okay, money's great and important, but I love creating. And I'd wanted to go to film school in the first place, but Dad said, get a real degree. And so I went back to Chapman, and in that process, started off as a student in the first year, an older student, but a student nonetheless in the MFA program. And after the first year, got to know the dean, and that's when they were just starting to design and implement the new film school, the Marionette Studios. And I had built lots of systems to move data. And Bob Bassett and I had what was supposed to be a lunch meeting, which turned out into all afternoon. And flash forward, we underwrote and donated the technology that went into the film school. So I was a student while we were also building a film school. And it was through that process that I was using Pamela as my lead artist, because I had a built-in superstar. And for my thesis, we took the students to New York and we shot a musical in the streets of New York at the Palace Theater, of course, because why not? And in Central Park. And we had this gem of a little film, and we met with somebody to help distribute the film. And they said, great, they were helping. And she called us one day, and this was after the Bernie Madoff scandal and the housing crisis. And Hair had been in Central Park and rave reviews, wonderful show, but was stuck getting to Broadway at a time where finances were drying up. And they asked us if we wanted to produce. And like most projects we get involved with, we said no. We're not producers, we're artists. I'm a director now, a film director. And then I just listened to the soundtrack. I was like, oh God, I forgot how good the music was. And then
the message really spoke to us, because this was also around the time where the Iraq War was coming out, and we were getting a lot of misinformation. We didn't know what to believe, and it just felt like it was kind of a throwback to exactly what was happening, or was the impetus to write Hair in the first place.
Yeah.
So it really resonated with us for something that was really relevant at the time.
And after saying no 2 or 3 times, we did say yes. And we said that we needed to come in and apply some of our theories, which was back then, most of the audience engagement and connection was very traditional, billboards in Times Square or direct mailers, taxi cab tops, all of the above. We knew we had a really good show. We knew it was an interesting time. And we were also partnering with a public theater who has an incredible base of supporters. And it's a beloved piece. Thus, capturing the 40, 50, 60, 70-year-olds was sort of a no-brainer because the show was really good. But it was, how do we engage the next generation of theater goer? And that's where we put a lot of our focus, using digital technologies. And at that time, starting to embrace things like social media, which all of that we amplified 10x when we moved into Memphis. So yeah, it started by saying no. That's how we began.
It's so funny. I knew we had similar thing, because it's so funny. I had the exact same thing where I was like, I want to direct and let me help you produce. It started the exact same way at like a community civic light type situation. Exactly that. Have yet to take a show to Broadway, but definitely something that we would love to do at some point. But so you won. Hair was obviously a well-calculated risk. You guys won the Tony. Mm-hmm. Such, I'm sure, surreal and incredible, especially having said no so many times, which we're going to get to talking about saying no a little bit later. But what is, then kind of transitioning into your next show, what are some key things that you learned, maybe good and bad, during Hair that helped prepare you to be even better producer? Oh, Isaac was saying hello.
Hi, Isaac. Hi.
Even better producers, working from home, folks. So even better producers, the second time around. What was that like for you guys?
All of the stuff we learned the first time around, and a lot of it was understanding sort of the territory of how a Broadway show is run. And Tim tells this story well. I'll try to tell it in my way. But when we first started going to the producer meetings for Hair, we were so excited because we had done a lot of theater before that, a lot of theater. And I had done Broadway shows, but I had never been a part of that other side of the table of Broadway shows. And so we thought, wow, we're going to find out from the pros how this is done, this magic way that shows come together. And then we realized it's a bunch of people sitting around the table going, head scratch. So what do you guys want to do? What do you think? And it's the nuts and bolts of putting on a show is the same anywhere you're doing it. And it's
different money.
It's different money. Exactly.
Yeah.
And it was fascinating to see how much was working in the system of Broadway and how much we thought there was room for improvement. And it's a slow moving train because it's a tradition, the way that shows are produced, and there's a certain way of doing things, and it's run by a lot of people.
To run a theater company that's like a nonprofit with a board that's been there for 60 some odd years, and it's like, but this is the way we do.
Exactly. Yeah, there's sort of
fight
a
against
tradition.
That grain to try to lead people into the future.
And not wanting to lose any opportunity for growth or finding those new audiences in new ways, we kind of tipped it on its side a little bit and got much more involved in the marketing of Memphis than we did in Hair. In fact, we were in charge of all of the footage and all of the B-roll that you would ever see for Memphis. We shot it within our company, Apples and Oranges. And with that footage, we had a way of being very facile with it, so we could cater a short film or a 60-second video to any audience. And these are things that weren't ever being done before. It was simply, you would send CBS your B-roll, and then they would curate it themselves.
Right. Yeah.
But we were able to put out ads for the regional theaters, for the buses that are coming into New York that were specific to specific groups of people. and give them a shout out, etc. So we were working with just new means of social distribution in ways that now a lot of people are doing, but back then they weren't doing it.
You know,
it's also using analytics, which was a fairly new concept at the time when it came to using the different channels. And in those days, 90% or even more of the budget was traditional advertising, and then a little bit would go over to digital. And Memphis, unlike, was completely different than Hair, where Hair had this iconic brand to it and generations of theaters that had done the show regionally. Memphis was an original show with original music, with a title that didn't give you much insight into what the story was. In fact, many people thought it was about Elvis, or
it's like Bandstand most recently. People were like, yeah, what is that?
What is it?
Yes.
I had a very similar experience going to Memphis and going to see that show, where I was just like, not just to interject for a second, I think what you guys did was the most, in my opinion, the most key element to the success of that production, because you don't know from the title, and other than word of mouth and it winning the Tony, and then when a show wins the Tony, it becomes the show that the tourists go see, which of course helps it run for, you know, a longer time, where it may not have had, you know, a show that doesn't win the Tony and doesn't have the name recognition may not have as successful of a run. I know Gentleman's Guide obviously benefited in the same way. With your show, I was actually there because I was there for NAMT, and we were all there at the conference together. And I remember I was not far from Tim. You were standing in the back watching your show, and I was like, this is his show. And I was sitting there with my friend Cami, and we were watching it. It was there one night where it was the elevator stopped the show for like darn near 40 minutes or something like that. It was a really long show stop. And it was my very first time I'd been in a Broadway show where the show came to a total halt. And we were so invested and so riveted by the storytelling in that show, and what an important show it was, and how beautiful a show it was. When that came back on, we were all like, we were still there and still in it, and even more supportive of it. By the end, everyone was just up on their feet, screaming and crying, and, you know, all of it. And just what a powerful experience to be a part of. But to go from Hair, a show that, as you said, has this big old history behind it, that has a proven success, you know, to dive into your second Broadway show with a brand new work. What was that like? And I think you being so key to that in helping, you know, get people into the theater with your, at the time, very new way of marketing the show. Well,
because most Broadway shows, if you look at the financials and numbers on them, anywhere from 80 to 85% are going to lose all or most of their money. And so people have said, wow, you've had these great successes. What's the secret? And I'd love to say I have an algorithm that dissects everything, that figures it out. But just like if I invest in a startup company in Silicon Valley, it truly is about the people. And so much credit goes to Sue Frost and Randy Adams from Memphis, who had shepherded the show.
They're awesome.
And also Joe DiPietro and David Bryan are two of the nicest, most collaborative people you'll ever meet. And it was funny because when we finished Hair, we were already starting to work on our next ideas for films. And our mutual friend, Tony Pontaro, got involved with Memphis, and he said, would you meet Sue and Randy? And we said, sure, but we're not interested in the show. So we actually turned Memphis down too, until we met at the meeting. But
let me know next time you turn down a show. And
I will. Well, American in Paris, I turned down, Pamela picked. So
American in Paris was different.
Yeah. But to your point, it's like anything. You have to feel emotionally connected to the piece. And Memphis was an interesting one, because when we read the script and listened to the music, we thought, okay, it's interesting, but I don't really know how it's going to play. And then we saw a table read, and we're just, like you said, you just get so invested in these characters. And ultimately, it is word of mouth that sells any show. No matter what you do, how much you spend, if the word of mouth isn't strong, then you're done. And we just felt, in fact, we knew from the regional productions at La Jolla and Fifth Avenue that the word of mouth was huge. Mm-hmm. Therefore, we had to find a way to amplify the people that were seeing it, because they are much more authoritative than us spending a lot of money on an expensive TV commercial. Thus, when we got involved, we took the budget that had already been prepared by the advertising company, and we just completely ripped it apart. Now, contractually, I was able to do that. So at first, it was a little contentious between the advertising company and us. I can say it ended incredibly well, and we are lifelong friends now, because they didn't quite know what I was doing with all of these new technologies yet, because we're still talking about 2009. Now they've all fully embraced them. And now many of the Broadway budgets have shifted to more digital than traditional media. But again, ultimately it boils down to the theme of the show, the creative people that are involved, and are people going to be willing to do that hard work during development and previews? Hair was baked and done. It wasn't going to change, but Diane Paulus's vision for it made it feel contemporary. Thus, it just worked. And then the same with Memphis. It was a show that on paper looks one way, and then you walked into that theater, and by the way, it was the soundboard that crashed the night that you were there.
Oh my gosh! Oh, funny, because the elevator is what to us.
Yeah, that's what everybody thought. It was the soundboard that crashed, and it's crazy because we have fault tolerant umpteen to you name it. So we have this, double that. But there was one circuit board in one computer that joined the soundboard and some of the other pieces. We had an extra circuit board, but it was stored in a storage closet. So I'm helping the sound guy, because we were filming that night too. I mean, that's how crazy it all was.
Oh, wow.
Because it's in October, and that's when we were opening and in previews and B-rolling. So we're climbing underneath while James Earl Iglehart was doing his one-man show up on stage for y'all.
It was amazing.
And we would just go pop in to see the song Radio. Like, we knew to the minute when something was happening.
We'd say, come on, let's go. We just finished dinner. oh, radio's gonna be on. Let's we can make it. We do our little 12-minute walk down to the theater, and we loved being a part of that show.
Yeah, I mean, it was just, it truly was such a, I had friends involved in it. It was a vacation swing, and that's why I ended up there and chatting with you, Tim, on stage afterwards, and Sue was there that night. It was a big night for y'all, and it was just truly an incredible moment, you know, in Broadway history to see. I love seeing shows like The Drowsy Chaperone, Memphis, Gentleman's Guide, they come from nothing, you know, or a story but not a movie and not a huge book, and it's really it was just beautiful. So going on to the next step. So people say, you know, third time's the charm, but you had already had two, so your third one could have been a big loser, right? But nope. You guys, half of you said no, half of you said yes, and y'all ended up on An American in Paris, which was wildly successful. Arguably, probably your most maybe successful. I don't know, obviously, dollars and cents, but it truly was an incredible thing. So did you expect it to be the success that it was? What was the development? I mean, this is from a film, obviously. So what was that like, translating that from, you know, film to stage, and then getting another Tony, and and then you know, winning, and then getting to have it play in Paris. I mean, so many amazing things that all got to do. So talk about that story a little bit.
Sure. It all started we were invited to a reading.
It was Tara.
Yeah. Our friend Tara Smith invited us to. She said, "Hey, I've been invited to this reading. Do you guys want to go too?" Sure, we did. So we just walked in sight unseen to see the workshop, which was, I think, about a 6-week process, and they did a full first act and a second act in sort of a black box situation. So they did a lot of the choreography, but it was very bare stage. It was a black stage. There wasn't a whole lot of scenery. But we essentially got the gist of it. And after I saw that workshop, I did not want to talk to Tim because I was very conflicted because, again, we were on to other things and we were on to writing and composing. And I've since become a composer in the last 10 years and was working on our show Higher Education, and Tim was writing the book. And we had a lot of other shows going on that we were working on. And this came up, and I never in my life have I seen storytelling through dance like this. And it's all Christopher Wheeldon. It's what the genius that he has with expression through movement that creates story is unlike anything I'd ever seen on Broadway. And I've seen a ton of dance shows on Broadway, and I love dance, even though I'm not a dancer necessarily. I do enjoy that part of the Broadway canon, but no one had ever done this before. And even though this was derivative of a film back in 1951, this really had a whole different take to it. They took the film apart and wrote really a whole other backstory that really grounded it in the liberation of Paris and how the Americans were part of that. And it also didn't shy away from the pain of that. So Jerry has to kind of face his demons and understand what it is to be an artist when you struggle, when you go through traumatic experiences. And he needed to express that through his art and ultimately found a way to do that, falling in love at the same time, because it's a musical and it makes you feel good. Wow. And so we love the themes of it, but the thing that sold me completely was the storytelling through dance that I thought was the most masterful I had ever seen in my life. And I thought, this has to go to Broadway, and I have to be a part of it, and we have to be a part of it. So I slept on it. I thought, make sure that I really feel this is true. And then the next morning I said, Tim, what did you think of the reading? And he had a very strong reaction as well. And I told him, we have to be a part of this. And so then we met Stuart Oken and Roy Furman, who were the lead producers at the time, and Van Kaplan. And again, it's a people business. You understand, we all understand that when you are working on a musical, it's lots of long hours and it's a long period of time. It's the marathon, not the sprint. And so the people are really, really important. Having met all the people, we felt a kinship to them, and we felt that we could give our services, we could help, we could be a part of this team. And so we did. We joined the team, ended up going to Paris, where the out-of-town tryout was, and that was one of the most incredible opening nights I have ever been to in my life. Because opening night is also your first preview. It's also, in our case, the first full run through of the show.
Oh my God.
Because our dress rehearsal, a giant set piece broke, and they had to stop. They could not continue the final dress rehearsal. And so they never got through. I think they stopped at about 10 or 15 minutes into the second act. They never ran the rest of it. Opening night, here we come. All the press is there. They had, how many cameras were lined up in the back? There were about 35 cameras along the back of the orchestra. It was insanity. And that's how they do it in France, as we learned. Wow. Opening night is the first show, is everything. So it was one of those crazy cartoon moments when we went through the whole run of the show and the audience was appreciative, applauding, but kind of quiet because there's a language barrier. There was a tape running with the translation in French, like you would for an opera. They could see the French, but there's a little loss in translation there. So they were sort of chuckling, but there weren't any big belly laughs or anything. So we're wondering, oh my gosh, is this going to land for them? Curtain comes down, silence, and the air is so electric. And then 3 or 4 seconds later, every single person jumps to their feet and starts cheering and applauding. It was about 6 minutes straight. People were just standing there, crying, applauding. And it was it was 3,000 people, by the way, in this gorgeous theater. And it was the beginning of a beautiful journey for us. Well, it was a middle of the journey, but that milestone was really, really a special moment.
That's huge. And it was also, I mean, I want to say not the first to use projections, but the way that you all used projections changed the game. I remember it's such a huge takeaway from that show. Everyone that was like, you have to see it, the projections and the choreography, and you know, that was truly when we all got to see it when the Pantages hosted our NAMP conference at the Pantages, and we all got to see it when it was there. It was just, yeah, so lush and just mind-blowing just to see the opulence of it, and even through its simplicity at times, it was really, really quite beautiful. So well done.
Well, one thing that when you commit, and there are many different levels of producing. In fact, most of the names that you see as producers, they've invested in the show, and there's not a whole lot of time they have to spend on it. But because we come in at a lead level in what we're doing as far as providing with the show, it's a multi-year commitment. And we don't outsource everything to agencies and vendors like some other shows do. We bring it internal so that we can craft the messaging and also be nimble. And that's very much what we did with this one, because every show has, like children, they have their own aspect to them. American in Paris had name recognition. It won an Academy Award. But if you go back and look at the original film, the story, as Pamela mentioned, was very thin. In fact, most people didn't truly remember. They just remembered Gene Kelly, and they remembered Fun Tap and maybe Leslie Caron. Well, we were not using a whole lot of tap. We were doing mostly ballet, and we were also, I won't say updating the story, but Pamela said it about putting higher stakes in there. Could have been a disaster, right? Because you're messing with this iconic, loved MGM film. But there was trust, and we always try to find people that we're going to grow and learn from. And it was that perfect marriage. You talk about Bob Crowley, who's one of the iconic set designers of all time, working with 59 Productions, which they're half his age, but artists into themselves. And since Bob was also working on the costumes, he and Christopher Wheeldon and Dante, like everybody was in service of the story. And that's where Stuart and Van and Roy, I'd always wanted to work with them. They all had different strengths, and we learned from that too. But to just one super quick clarification, we didn't win Best Musical. It won Tonys.
I know, that's what I shouldn't have said the Tony, but I mean,
yeah.
you won some Tony Awards.
We did. We still won yes. 4, and it was still a success.
And honestly, what kind of is even more a testament to the work is that it had such a successful run, and then a success after its Broadway run without the Tony Award. You know what I mean? Which is, I think, an even more, I think it says it's even more successful in my opinion, because the work didn't need that. You know what I mean? It stood on its own, and there are a few shows that have been able to do that. Which is,
it's true, and we've been lucky enough to see it regionally in a lot of the theaters when it went around the country, and it's gone to Asia. And we got to see the opening night in Tokyo
Amazing.
Was it it was last January, 2019. Yeah. Which was beyond cool to see Gershwin translated into Japanese.
That's
absolutely fascinating.
That cast was so incredible.
Yeah, they really, man, they do some incredible art over in Japan. Like the video you see of like Little Mermaid to any other thing, you're just like, whoa! They do a beautiful job over there, and their artistry is just impeccable. So now I eagerly await your next genius move, because you don't, which, you know, you see some Broadway producers hop from one show to another, and they have the series of hits and flops within their own canon. And you guys have been very calculated in the way you make your decisions and very, very smart. And obviously have a lot of other things going on as well, beyond being Broadway producers, which we're going to talk about in a minute. But, you know, I've had similar experiences where we were offered producers on shows where I knew it was not the right fit, like Hands on a Hard Body or the Toxic Avenger, where I was like, those shows are not gonna, great shows, but not gonna make a Broadway transition the way that some off-Broadway, it's not gonna be a next to normal type moment. So what have you ever, first of all, like, do you have some things in the works, and then I'm sure of which you can't talk about, but, and then have you ever said no to something that you regret saying no to, where you're like, damn it?
No, we say no probably 90% of the time. We were never asked to be in the same way. Early on, our GM was working on Dear Evan Hansen and Stacey Mindich. We all got together when they were in previews of it, and I fell in love with the show. But we were so busy with An American in Paris, and they were doing their thing. So do we wish we would have written a check for that show? Maybe, but there's nothing that we have any regrets about. We are insanely picky because financial aspect is very important, but so is what you're putting on stage, because people are consuming it, and we want them to consume messages that we feel good about. And
so important. And I think that a testament to who you guys are as artists and people, and why you keep giving us great things to see. So I'm gonna call it my little brief intermission here, where we're gonna dive into the musical theater nerd in us all and talk about Into the Woods. Pamela, come on now. So
I have a little show and tell, TJ.
Oh, exciting! Okay.
Yeah. Should I save that for
I have
later?
been to your house, and if you have not shown me this, I'm going to be very upset.
I am not sure if I've shown you this, but well, first I'll show you I have two things. This is my first thing. This is, as you can see, a very cute little cottage made out of ceramic. And if you can get close, it says Into the Woods 11/5/87. And this was my opening night gift from James Lapine.
Oh my gosh.
In my guest bedroom. And I just kind of love that.
I love it.
I would show you that. And then this is my joy. Whenever I need a little pick-me-up, or I'm feeling a little down, I go to this part of my house where this is hanging. This is a telegram, and it is from Steve. And it was given to me the last day that I performed in Into the Woods. And it says, "Dear Pam," because I was Pam back then, "Dear Pam, you were and are wonderful. Love, Steve." So in the tradition of old shows where telegrams were sent on closing nights, he sent me a telegram on my last performance.
I mean, come on, how amazing and beautiful. Next time I'm at your house, I'm going to go hunting for that. I'm like, where is it?
I'm feeling a little choked up just thinking about it.
I bet. I mean, what an incredible moment. I was talking to another friend last week who, she was a part of like a bunch of, shows like that. At that time, we haven't seen a time like that again, where there has been that kind of theater happening all at once. You know what I mean? And
yes,
you were such a big part of, and it was something that one of the few that got filmed and then released, so you got to be a part of it for forever. And I was so glad that they did that with basically many of his shows, Stephen's Sondheim shows at the time. And they're such important works. And so tell me about that, encapsulate that process, which is so hard. I know your roommate was Danielle Furland.
that's right.
Little Red Riding Hood. And but you guys were like the babies of the company. But so tell me a little bit about that audition, booking that job, the rehearsals. I mean, were you a musical theater, like, did you go like, oh my God, that's Bernadette Peters? Or were you like, hey, hi, who are you?
Oh, yeah, I could barely speak in her presence. I was so enamored and in love with Bernadette Peters and could not believe that I was actually going to be on stage with her. It was beyond. Yeah, I was a senior at Carnegie Mellon at the time, studying musical theater and putting in my 10,000 hours. And it was March, and an audition came up for an original Sondheim show. That's all I knew. And so I got an audition, thankfully, and I flew one way from Pittsburgh to Newark, $19 on People's Express Airlines.
Oh my God, are you kidding me?
I am not kidding you. And I went into the city and had my audition. And then I got called back a couple of times.
That's
and
$19 you ever spent.
Best 19 bucks I ever spent. And I got called back until I got to the final callback, which was on the stage of the Martin Beck Theater. And I had never been on a Broadway stage in my life. I'd seen Broadway shows, but never on a Broadway stage. And it was just like a movie. There was a ghost light, and the stage manager, or the person holding the auditions, the monitor, it was my turn. I walked onto the stage and I sang and I read. And when I was reading, I was hearing this kind of garbled noise in the audience, which I could barely see because it was very, very black out there. I didn't know who was out there. And when I finished the monologue, I kind of squinted because what is that noise? It was Stephen Sondheim cracking up. He was doubled over laughing from my interpretation of Rapunzel, the sides. And I was feeling pretty good about that. And so I thanked everybody and I walked off the stage, and I immediately went to the first payphone, pulled a dime out of my purse and called my agent and said, hey, it went great. I think I might have gotten this part. And they, of course, talked me down and said, there were 200 people there today. You really don't get your hopes up. And then 3 days later, they sent me a principal contract. I was back in Pittsburgh, and they said, you're in, baby. We want you to do this.
I mean, like, you're just talking about your performance real quick. And I've told you this before, but part of what makes a show obviously so great and so special is when every person in the show is on the same level and on the same page, no matter how big or small their role. And when it was your turn, man, I mean, it was your turn. I mean, you were so brilliant, so funny, and your honesty and commitment. I've never, ever, ever seen an actress attack that part. And because it's you, I mean, no one can obviously imitate, but I've never seen anyone crack open a part like that and attack it with that kind of, I don't even have words for it. It was just truly, truly, truly brilliant. And something that my sister and all of us growing up, we were always like, oh my God, the Rapunzel, she's so funny. And then to meet you years later, I was just like, oh my God, there you are. And you look the same. How does that happen? But anyway, so how many times did you have to scream? I'm sure you counted them. How many times did you have to scream in the show? How many times per week? And do you have the running total for your run as Rapunzel by any chance?
I should do the math. I had 56 screams a week.
Oh.
And some of them were gigantic screams and some of them were little screams. But I would say there were like 4 or 5 pretty damn large screams. And I did 634 performances as Rapunzel, I believe. And I think I did 100 and some as Cinderella. Longer than that. I did that for several weeks. I can't remember. I should get that data for you. I'll put it in the chat if I find it. But
yeah, there's someone who has a calculator.
Yeah, 634 times 56.
No. Okay, so that's 35,504 screams.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Oh,
Okay,
yeah.
so
Yeah.
and your screams are like horror movie, like people like would pay you to voice that over. I mean, your screams were epic, and then you'd have this stunning soprano voice. That was another question. I was like, how? I would
And
scream like that once, and my voice would be like, see ya.
people ask me, and honestly, I don't know. I really don't know, except that it's about something about support. I never screamed without being supported and understanding that I had to really get deep and low into my diaphragm and my belly to support it rather than up here and tight.
Right, right. Well, it was definitely coming from a guttural place. There was nothing up and tight about those screams. Do you have any, real quick before we move on to other things, either your funniest or scariest or most memorable moments in that show that are like behind the scenes kind of, and or things that happen on stage that we may not be aware of?
Absolutely. I'll give you one that involved Bernadette and me. It was a typical matinee, and it was right before Stay With Me, which is a very dramatic scene. And we would be off stage kind of getting into the moment for that scene. And I had a scream off stage. And then Bernadette would drag me from upstage right all the way down to the front lip downstage center to start the scene. She would throw me into the pool of light, and then the scene would begin. And so just like a normal day, I screamed loudly, and then she pulled me by the hair and got stuck in a tree panel.
Oh no.
So the tree panels were they were metal rods made to look like trees, and they were on tracks, and they were run by a computer. And every scene they would switch. It was really cool because the woods really changed every single time. And so at this particular time, a panel got stuck. And so we couldn't go through there. We looked at each other. I screamed again, and she dragged me, and we hit another panel. And we were almost at center stage by this point. We're realizing, we may not be able to get on the stage. And so she dragged me again. I screamed. She dragged, I screamed. She dragged, I screamed, all the way off upstage left as the curtain was coming down. And both she and I were doubled over in laughter. We just could not believe it. And of course, the show stopped dead. And it was probably about 15, 25 minutes later. And we had gone back to stage right, and we were ready for our cue, and the panels were reset, and probably somebody grabbed some WD-40 and got those panels to go, and we did it again.
Oh man, and that is not a show you want to add another 25 minutes to, because it's already like a long show, right? But that's another testament to how incredible y'all are, because I'm sure people were still insanely riveted at that moment.
One would hope.
Yeah, right. So you're, I remember another story, and then we'll talk about a couple other things, and we'll open it up to some questions. And I want to talk about Theater Accelerator and all that stuff too. I remember, was it you that told me the story about, it was Ed Lindbeck, who was like he disappeared in the theater and people were running all over looking for him? Or was that Gregory North Zirkle that told me that story? He was like asleep under his dressing room table. He Cinderella's father fell asleep under his dressing room table. People thought he was either had gone home or died somewhere. And they were like, where is he? Where is he? Where is he? And they were running all over the place, and he was just napping under his table.
I believe that you told me that story. I was not privy to that story.
That came from Greg then. Yeah.
Does not surprise me in the least. Ed was a lovely guy, but the befuddled part of it came naturally to him in a very sweet way. So
I love it.
No surprises there.
Yeah, real quick, for any Trekkie fans out there, how was working on Star Trek: The Next Generation? How was that set? Was that a pretty amazing experience?
That was truly a dream. What an iconic show to be able to dive into and put on the uniform and go to the actual bridge. And I was so thrilled and petrified going in as my first day as Ensign McKnight, because I didn't know how the bridge was going to be. I didn't know how the mechanisms were going to work, what I was going to have to learn. And I didn't get to go on the set until the run right before you shoot.
Oof.
So you rehearse and you get it all in your head and you got it in the trailer and you know your lines, but you go in and then we had maybe 10 minutes to run through the stuff, and I had to deal with this board. And so I had Brent Spiner, who's also a Broadway guy, play Data. He was next to me. And so I had known that he was on Broadway and Sunny in the Park and all that. We had some mutual friends. So we were chatting it up, and I said, when we sat down, I said, the bridge has no buttons. It's literally a piece of glass or plastic. It has nothing. Okay. There are no buttons. There's no light. There's nothing. So I thought, oh my gosh, they were just completely, he's like, yeah, they were just making it up. He said, just all I knew was that the throttle was somewhere over on the right. Okay. And so I'm practicing this. I'm making up this whole panel thing in my head, and I'm listening to Patrick Stewart giving me orders to plot a course for Evadne 4. And I say, aye, sir. And I look down, what the hell am I going to do? And I press some buttons with the utmost authority. And then he says, engage, and then I go to the right and I grab a fake throttle and I push it with all my force, and it felt so wonderful. Like I had gone into the world of fantasy of Star Trek in that moment. How
awesome. That had to be so much fun. I mean, that had to be just insane. And working with all those actors, and what an incredible experience. So real quick, because we could literally talk for forever and ever and ever, because you guys all have so many incredible things to chat about. Let's talk about Theater Accelerator and Broadway Tech Accelerator real quick. Can you guys touch on those things? And then lastly, before we open it up to questions, what do you see the future of Broadway being when we come back from this? Do you have your ear to the ground on, I have heard everything from June to September to 2021 of when Broadway's coming back. And then what is the future of Broadway technology? Where do you see that headed from an audience's perspective?
There's daily we are on calls to wrap up. As much as we love Broadway, the last almost 10 years of our lives have been looking at the future of the art form. And through a combination of what we do in our nonprofit at Apples and Oranges Arts, as well as what we've done in the for-profit and the technology background, we have built these programs to create new models. Because even when Broadway is working as it should, you have thousands of shows every year with only 41 Broadway theaters and 20 of those being available. Thus, we needed a way to create new voices, new stories to be heard. Through our Theater Accelerator, we treat artists like entrepreneurs, and they go through a 2-week virtual program that ends with Sing Tank, where they are creating a pathway and an outline for their show and pitching it to get other people involved, as well as other initiatives that we've done, including most recently the film stage musical adaptation, where we were taking shows, for example, Emma, which we looked at taking to Broadway in 2011, but that was one where I couldn't get everything to align. And I felt that we didn't see the financial path to recovery with the only theaters that were available at that particular moment in time. But we then filmed it in 2018 on a stage, but filming it like a film where we shoot it scene by scene. And then we're now distributing it, and it's selling very well right now. We have been evangelizing this for the past 5 years, but heavily in the past 2 years, about digital opportunities and virtual opportunities in the storytelling/Broadway space. In the last few months, we've become insanely relevant. In fact, we are now running classes for a number of the regional theaters through NAMPT, as you mentioned, as well as doing webinars. Or while Pamela was answering all these things, I was answering questions for people that are absolutely struggling right now, because it is a devastating, devastating time. And the regional theater, it impacts everybody, you name it. I'm sure you're going through the same thing. When can you safely put people in a live experience again. Also not incurring liability, because that's a big part of it too. Thus, it has to line up with government regulations, as well as protecting your actors, protecting your staff, protecting everybody. What does that look like? And we've run many a scenario. A month ago, June was more, July was looking hopeful. But as time continues on, for Broadway, there's going to be at least a 4 to 6 week ramp up period once the date is known, because you've got to go back in and rehearse. And some of these shows won't make it through this. You're going to have to move out those sets.
Well, truly, and then I was going to say all of the, just the process. People say, well, can you socially distance people in their seats? And I'm like, how can a show afford that? Like, how can you have Broadway shows close when you're half empty, do you know what I mean? Yeah. Or less. I mean, they close it sometimes when you're 60%. So I don't understand how that's even possible. So yeah, I'm sorry to interject.
You're exactly right. These are the conversations we're having. And because of the Broadway Tech Accelerator that you mentioned, the Schuberts and I partnered, or Schuberts and us partnered last year, well, a little bit even before last year, looking at the optics of, at that time, more of technology to help amplify the live. But luckily, we were also looking at technology that helps now replace the live, or at least as a bridge until you get live back. But even when we get live back, it is not a switch that says 0 to 60 go. It is, how do you social distance a seating chart where a family of 4 is sitting here, but they can't be sitting right in front or in back of somebody else? And what about single ticket holders? The variables go on. Do you use paper playbills because people can touch things? How do you line people up to get into the theater if they have to be 6 feet apart? But where it first happened, we were all a little bit globally just in a haze of, I hope this is over soon, maybe it'll be over soon. Realism has set in. And even if we do come back in a July timeframe, it's going to be heavily modified. So my personal view, and this has nothing to do with the Schuberts or anybody else, I see September as the earliest of doing anything in New York, and more realistically is later. And if it does come back in the winter again strong, this virus, we're looking at sometime in 2021, if not 2022.
Yeah,
for Broadway to be what Broadway was. Because you also have to figure in, who wants to hop on a plane right now and fly to New York? Who has the money to do it? There's so many things that go into this.
Yeah, we haven't announced it yet, but similar thing in that we can't afford looking at all these Broadway shows and shows that were open and all that, who are taking a huge hit, and may, like you say, some may not come back from it. We have talked a lot about what things look like out here, and if we were to have to socially distance, and there's certainly some houses that we've had where I'm like, socially distancing would not be a problem. But that's not the goal. That's not what you want. And so we made a very, very tough call. We're not coming back until February of next year. Like, we will not be producing until a year. If someone told me when we closed Kinky Boots in first weekend of March, which was basically we ran the month of February, that we wouldn't be producing again for another year, I would have laughed in their face. I'm not that kind of person, but I would never have believed it in a million years. And it's been so devastating to see what it's, I think a lot of industries, their ramp up will be much faster, but our type of thing, sporting events, concerts, theater, it's going to be all the last thing to come back. And it's like, how do we survive? So I'm so glad you guys are we're all having these conversations to figure it out, because it's pretty devastating.
And part of what we're doing now is looking at the pipeline and building tools and techniques to continue the art form development. We successfully ran a 29-hour read virtually. We ran a concert, we ran a gala, all of these pieces that in no way are meant to replace the live, but to continue to employ actors where we can, employ creatives, and just
And
keep
do you have your own platform? Or are you using like Zoom, or you
we're
guys have
using
your?
Zoom.
Okay.
Zoom is our friend. We've used them since the beginning because a friend is involved with Zoom, and
Oh,
it's
cool.
the only investment in the stock market that's done well for us lately.
Yeah. No,
But
no lie there. Yeah.
we have a number of people at Zoom we can call, and they're very, very much interested in supporting theater. So we're constantly looking at use cases. In fact, we're doing a play reading, a Tom Stoppard play with a group out in England on the 2nd of May. I'll send you that poster. It should be done tomorrow. You can send it out.
Please
Where it's
do.
a small play. All the money's going towards charity. Working with Sam Yates to direct it, who's both a stage and film director. I'm the technical director of it. Because again, we've been doing virtual for years. So Theater Accelerator was always virtual. So it hasn't impacted Theater Accelerator at all.
Right, right.
And we're
So,
running another one in May, starting
Yeah.
on May 4th.
oh, amazing. Okay, so real quick, and then I'm going to open up to a couple questions because we're going to go over time here. But the at Zoom, have you guys tried to figure out? Since I'm so glad that you guys are so well connected there, because this was never designed. Zoom was never designed to do what so many are trying to use it for right now. It was a meeting thing, right? But now people are trying to use it for the arts, which is amazing. But there's a latency issue with music, and you can't sing with someone, obviously, if you're not in the same room, and then all that kind of stuff you have to pre-record. So what are they working on that right now, specifically for the performing arts, and trying to figure out how to make live things possible?
It's funny you should ask.
Yes.
And talk about the L word, because we are all trying to crack this nut because we need it. And we've been working with several people. We have one of the Broadway Tech Accelerator companies that is going through, that Tim and Kyle Wright are leading. He is working on this project and has a background in this type of technology. And we've been also experimenting with people remotely for the last 3 weeks. And we've made a little bit of progress, but can't say that we've solved it yet.
Well,
but
we had a breakthrough this morning that I haven't even filled you in on.
Oh, that's exciting.
So TJ, actually, I can't. I was going to share a diagram.
I'll have to sidebar.
I was going to share a diagram with you to show you, but if you want to grant me sharing experience, I'll give you a quick visual of what we're doing.
Boom, granted.
Okay. So what you're talking about, and we purposely have it in a skeleton format, is exactly this, where it is designed to be these meeting spaces are designed to be collaborative. And there is a latency in when you and I are talking, but it's a millisecond latency. And for a conversation, it's not necessarily a huge deal.
And even for a play, it's not a huge deal. But once you start adding music, that's the issue.
Right. And so what we've done is, even for book scenes, you still have to adjust to it. So for example, when we did this 29-hour read, there was one character where the comedy of it was, this one character was always about to say something inappropriate, and she would be cut off by another character.
Mm.
And you son of a, oh, well, we're doing this. And so she would never be able to say the word. But the problem was the other actress was reacting in the way you would on stage, which is she was listening for the cue line, and she was timing it to how you would do it on stage, but she was always late. Because the same with, we have here a piano and a singer. The problem is when a piano player strikes a chord, the singer hears it at the same time the audience member hears it. But when the singer sings, it's going to be off both the video and the audio. And the same is even true with acting. So for acting, we just said, back it up 2 words. That's all we had to do, and it worked, and you could get the snappiness of comedy. But there technically is no way to make the entire internet faster. So it's not Zoom's fault. It is the fact that you have multiple hops in, well, it has to do with so many different things. Bandwidth for the individual people that are running it, their upload, their download speeds, the repeaters that it's hitting if I'm in New York and you're in California. So there's no way to just do it in this environment. However, if we look at it more like this, that we already know, where we take a stream out and we pull in, and P stands for piano and S stands for singer, and we take their streams individually, where the singer's hearing the piano player and the singer sings, we line them up like a video editing system would line up a multicam shot, but we do it in real time. And so our first use case is piano and one singer. And then the next thing we're working on is more of a cabaret setting where you have a piano and other singers. But we've already made things work with tracks where if the singer's playing the track, or you can run a musician playing guitar through an audio interface, so you can start adding reverb, and we can get live sound to sound good. It's just coming from single instances. And so far, most of the things that you see where people are blown away going, wow, that looks so great, are all,
Editing.
yeah, they're all pre-recorded.
Of course, yeah.
A soundtrack is sent out. So to do it live is a whole other piece. So we've been working with Zoom and one of the Broadway Tech Accelerator companies on this, as well as just putting in all of the other pieces we need to do paid live theater, meaning making it very easy for people to buy tickets, and how do you curate the process from beginning to end. Because again, this is not going to go away in a couple of months. I mean, you just said you're not doing a show again for almost a year.
Mm-hmm.
But if you could put on something for your audience this summer that was virtual with the best of, have some singers live, and it's not just this simple recorded feeling, but it actually has a visceral feel of the people going live and doing things. And we're also working with them on window arrangements so that you can start to look at it differently, because right now we're all doing a single camera shot center. So we're using film language to say, if we're doing a scene, how do I be in one window and Pamela looks at me? How do we do that in separate windows?
Right.
Because right now, some of these things just move the windows on their own. So you need window locking technology, you need size changing technology.
It's fascinating and so cool. And I'm so glad that I know two brilliant people that are helping spearhead it, because and so I'm going to be giving you a call, because we definitely have talked about, you know, we have a lot, when we make our official announcement, we're going to talk about all the ideas that we have to, you know, stay relevant and engaged, and helping our artists, but also, of course, engaging with our patrons. And obviously, we're all going to have to crack the nut of this online thing for a period of time until we can all be in the same room again together. But yeah, so I'm definitely going to be giving you guys a call.
Well, we
figure out how
we've worked with so many regional theaters over the last couple of weeks, and the results are already coming in from initiatives, and they're overwhelmed with the support of their community.
Amazing.
Even simple things like season subscriptions, just helping them word how people can donate it back. Like, you don't lead with, we need money, donate back, because other people might need the money financially. We just say, look, here's the realistic situation of where we're at. If you are okay, can you donate it back? And in exchange, we'll come back and do something for you, all the way to, we've already replaced galas, and some of them have done absolutely fantastic already. But yeah, that's again, we're putting on a show. It's theater started off on a street corner, and we're figuring it all out, and we will. It's just going to be time.
I mean, South Coast Rep started out of the trunk of their car. So, I mean, you know what I mean? And they're now a Tony Award-winning mega complex company. So we are going to figure this out together. And I am feeling a more sense of togetherness in this, in our community worldwide than I have, you know, maybe ever since really becoming a producer. And it's been amazing to be a part of it, and so thrilled to have all of these beautiful faces here watching and participating in this conversation. Before we say goodbye, because you guys have been so generous with your time, does anyone have a question they'd like to ask to either or both of these incredible people, whether it be about technology, about the Broadway, about producing, about Into the Woods, whatever. Anyone have anything? Raise your hand and we'll call on you. But if we've covered it all, we'll see you at the next one. Anyone have any questions?
Madeline has
Madeline.
one.
Madeline.
Madeline, where are you? I'm looking for you.
She's right here. Her headshot's up. Go ahead, Madeline.
Oh, I see her. Okay. Hold on.
There I am. Hey.
Hi.
Hey. I was wondering how, more geared, I guess, towards Tim, but how have you balanced your IT career with the theater?
It's a great question.
I have this weird ability to be able to switch between the different sides of my brain, but it's also, a lot of people think you have to use one or the other, but in essence, they're the same thing, whether you're building a large scale system that has to be used by global users or you're putting on a show. The skill set is communication and collaboration and solving problems. Anybody well, TJ can attest to this probably more than that. You end up, there's always a new problem on every show that you never dreamed of you would see. And the longevity in this business is not about what happens during the hits, because that's the easy part. The longevity is, how do you handle working with all different kinds of backgrounds of people? And again, whether they be techie programmers or they be sound engineers, you have to create an environment where you lift everybody else up. And I find that more even true as a director, is you have to lead, but you also have to do it with a way that's open to other people's ideas.
I guess, like, as, you know, whatever career path we choose, you know, everybody wants you to fully focus on that. You know, if it's, you know, my dad owns a manufacturing company, so I've been very much involved in that, using my, you know, right side of the brain, math and everything. But it's like with any trying to get a job, you know, they want you to work, to dedicate all your time into that, which I totally understand. But when you're, you know, a theater nerd and wanting to pursue the passion of theater, it's like trying to figure out how you can balance that and still achieve your goals in theater with, you know, having to pay the bills too, with doing the more math side of the world. And it's finding that balance.
And I did exactly that growing up in Orange County, because I didn't come from an environment where I could do whatever I wanted to. I had to pay for it myself. And so when I was finishing up my senior year in college, I started programming, which made money. But then what's great about doing theater in California is you can do shows at night. The big decision you have to make is, in fact, when I started going to New York, is if you're really going to do Broadway, it is a commitment to being available all the time. But by the time I got to that level where it was Broadway is a possibility, I had already fallen in love so much with doing multiple things, as far as directing, producing, and even on the technology side, to where I realized I didn't want to do 8 shows a week in the ensemble. I enjoyed doing a show as a principal at a smaller theater than going back and trying to just make it on Broadway. So for a good 10 years in Orange County, I was living the dual lives. I mean, even to the point where I had 2 cars. I had a beat up old Datsun that I drive to Debbie Reynolds' studio to audition. And then I had a nice German-made automobile that we would go to the clients for when we were doing the tech stuff, so we could go out to lunch. And I would change in the car. And one time I got a friend who in fact, in those days, there was no social media. So you could live these 2 different lives. Now it's harder, I admit. But a good friend who actually he worked at Southern California Edison, which was one of our clients. He knew I was performing, and one day before a meeting, he goes, "You have silver on your neck," because I was playing the Tin Man in Wizard of Oz, and obviously had showered, but not well enough. But what I quickly found, though, is that most people have, even in a traditional business, have some form of an artistic side, whether they make model rockets or paint. And the other beneficial thing is that there are so many companies now are searching for creative thinkers rather than just engineers. So in Silicon Valley, they can find engineers graduating from these colleges, but people that are problem solvers usually come from an arts background. And I don't, especially now what the world is becoming, because it's not only COVID, we have climate change, we have so many other things that we need to solve in the future. I'm a member of TED, and this week we're supposed to be in Vancouver for the TED conference, but we're not. So today they ran a virtual 4-hour session, and you have some of the brightest people speaking on this, and everybody says we're going to get through this COVID thing, but we should also use it as a learning example of what we need to do as humanity.
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
Really, really beautifully put. Any other, maybe like one more question if anyone has one before we depart? Anything else? Looking through the pages. Looks like we're all good.
While we wait, I'm going to give, because sometimes people ask me, how do you deal with curveballs that are thrown at you? And I at least see a name on here of Carrie Hayter, who's a good friend and who I directed in Nonsense, who's also got a very mischievous side. So those of you that are working with her as a director, I can tell you stories. I don't know if she's paying attention right now, but she definitely knew how to push buttons when it comes to making you think on your feet.
I love it. Yeah, she's amazing. She directed our production of Once. And
Wow.
yeah, actually one of our cast members is on. Eric, love you. And yeah, she's brilliantly talented, and always blessed to work with her. But I did not know that you directed her in that show, and I have not gotten to see that mischievous side, which I'm excited.
Oh yes, well, now she's so respectable, I probably shouldn't tell you, but
that's like one of my favorite things of the day. So thank you. All right. Well, you guys, if you do not, Tim and Pamela, if you guys can give your social medias a shout out real quick, you guys should be following them. They have just incredible and fascinating lives and so many things that you guys can learn. And if you're interested in writing a show or anything, check out their Accelerator program. Obviously, if you're interested in technology and you can participate in that anyway, contact them, follow them again on social media. A lot of, okay, good. Yeah, I see NYCOC.
That's our nonprofit where you can see about Theater Accelerator.
Perfect.
And then Pamela's, and both of us are pretty simple. It's just at Pamela Winslow Kashani or at Tim Kashani. But we have Apples and Oranges Arts is our nonprofit, and then NYCOC.com is studios and the for-profit. And that's where you can see things like the trailers for the films we've made, as well as a lot of the initiatives that we're doing. And the next class of Theater Accelerator will be up there too. But we can also send you out when that stuff is ready to go.
Yeah, please do. You guys, they're amazing. We love them. A big, huge virtual round of applause for these two incredible people. Love you guys.